I'm Eleanor, 36, and last week I found out I'd been erased from the family trip, the group chat, and even the ownership papers of the catamaran I paid for myself. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I got the email, my cabin canceled, replaced by my sister-in-law's yoga instructor. So I showed up uninvited, documents in hand. When the crew welcomed me aboard as the owner, the entire family froze. And that night at dinner, I laid the receipts on the table and watched their version of legacy fall apart. That weekend, I stopped waiting for a seat at their table. I brought my own. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever been pushed aside from something you built, like this video and subscribe. You won't want to miss what came after. My mornings usually start slow. A cup of coffee, brewed just right, in my favorite ceramic mug, the one with a tiny chip near the handle that I've never bothered to replace. The kitchen window of our quiet suburban home lets in just enough soft light to make the granite counters gleam. On that particular day, Marcus, my husband, had already left for an early client meeting, leaving behind the lingering scent of his aftershave and a half-eaten banana on the counter. I was scrolling through my phone, mostly out of habit, thumbing through emails and calendar alerts, when it snagged on a post from Clara, Marcus's niece. A boomerang video, you know, those short looping clips. It was a champagne toast. Clinking glasses, glittering smiles, and in the background, unmistakable, the sleek ivory hull of the Odyssey, the Thorne family's pride and joy. The caption read, "Thorne family coastal cruise tradition loading. Can't wait to set sail." My thumb literally froze mid-scroll. The annual family coastal cruise. It had been a Thorne family tradition for years, long before I ever married Marcus. And in the 5 years since our wedding, I'd been invited to it exactly twice. The first time, I made the innocent mistake of suggesting we rotate destinations, maybe try a different part of the Emerald Coast, or even a Caribbean island one year. Big mistake. The second time, Cassandra, Marcus's younger sister, made it painfully clear with her tight, polite smile and saccharine tone that I was a guest. Not family, just a guest. I clicked into Clara's post, then another and another. Faces I knew, Leo, Cassandra's husband, looking smug beside her. Their twin sons, Grandma Celeste, Marcus's mother, holding a mimosa, her pearls gleaming. Marcus's younger cousin, Lena, with her fiancé. Everyone except me. There was a family group chat, Thorne Legacy Voyagers. Marcus had added me to it a few years ago, then, quietly, mysteriously, I was removed after some minor incident involving a dinner seating chart. Long story, but trust me, it was peak Cassandra. I checked anyway. Nothing, no chat, no messages. Not a single email about the trip. I just stared at my phone, the coffee cooling beside me. My pulse wasn't racing, not exactly. It was something worse, a stillness, a sinking confirmation that this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. That afternoon, while rinsing out a glass in the kitchen sink, my phone buzzed. A new message, from Cassandra, but it wasn't meant for me. It was a screenshot of a group text, a photo of finalized cabin assignments. Under starboard guest suites, a name had been crossed out. Mine, and next to it, confirmed for Chloe. Chloe, Cassandra's new yoga instructor. The one who'd once asked me if I was Marcus's assistant. The next message was a voice note. Cassandra's voice, mid-laugh, high and airy. Well, at least the energy on board won't be so tight this year. Tight? I set the phone down without responding. My hands were steady, but my jaw ached from clenching. At dinner that evening, I didn't mention it right away. Marcus was distracted, scrolling through stock alerts between bites of salmon. "Did you know your family's planning another coastal cruise?" I asked lightly. He glanced up. "Yeah, Mom mentioned it last week. I think they're still finalizing the list." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Am I on the list?" He frowned, put down his fork. "Of course. Why wouldn't you be?" I smiled, just enough to keep the tension from rising. "Just curious." He went back to his phone. "I'll double-check." He wouldn't. He never did. After dinner, I washed the dishes by hand, one by one. It's funny how silence can say more than shouting. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan blades slicing through the air over and over. My mind replayed every moment I'd been quietly pushed out. Birthdays with no invitation. Brunches I found out about from Instagram stories. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I wasn't naive. I didn't expect warmth from Cassandra. But this was deliberate. The worst part was that no one would say it out loud. No one had to. At some point, you stop asking why they don't include you. You start asking yourself why you kept trying to belong. Before I turned off the bedside lamp, I pulled my journal from the drawer and wrote one sentence in steady ink. Watch. Don't react yet. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Cassandra. It was one of those messages that sounded polite if you didn't read between the lines and cut like a blade if you did. Hey Eleanor, just realizing we may have missed reserving a spot for you on the cruise. Totally my oversight. The trip filled up quicker than expected this year, so sorry. Hope we can catch up after. There it was. Her signature blend of sweet poison, short, chirpy, coded in emojis and passive apologies. No room for conversation. No offer to fix it. Just a casual admission that I had been erased, dressed up as a logistical slip-up. I didn't respond. I couldn't trust my fingers not to betray the composure I was clinging to. I reread the message, then closed my phone and got dressed. My plan had been to go to the farmer's market that morning. Instead, I sat at the kitchen counter, still in jeans and a sweater, drinking coffee that had long gone cold. Mid-morning, an email popped into my inbox. From the charter company. Cancellation confirmation, cabin release successfully processed. I blinked. Opened it, read it again. The request had been logged 3 days prior. Name of requester, Cassandra Thorne. So that's how she wanted to play it. I stared at the screen, the edges of my vision blurring a little, not from tears, just from the sudden pressure building behind my eyes. I forwarded the email to myself, then printed it. One copy, crisp, clean. I slid it into a manila folder I kept in my bottom drawer, labeled Tax and Property. It would get a new label soon. By the time Marcus got home, the sun had dipped low enough to throw long shadows across our living room floor. He kicked off his shoes and dropped his keys into the ceramic dish by the door, like it was any other Thursday. I waited until he grabbed a beer from the fridge before speaking. Cassandra texted me. He took a sip, leaned against the counter. Oh yeah? What about the cruise trip? She says she forgot to reserve me a spot. He frowned, clearly caught off guard, but not exactly shocked. Really? That seems odd. She called it a miscommunication, huh? He took another drink. Maybe it was just that. You know how chaotic those things get. Everyone's trying to coordinate. It wasn't a miscommunication, I said calmly. I got a cancellation email. It was submitted by her 3 days ago. He didn't look at me right away, just swirled the bottle in his hand like it might show him a smarter response. I mean, maybe she thought plans had changed, or that we weren't coming. He exhaled. I'm just saying, let's not assume the worst. She replaced my name with someone else's Marcus. That's not an assumption. It's a receipt. He stayed quiet. And in that quiet, I heard everything I needed to. Later that evening, after he retreated to the den to zone out to ESPN, I sat at the dining room table and opened my laptop. I didn't look up old texts or memories. I didn't scroll through past photo albums, hoping to see myself smiling in some long-forgotten group shot. Instead, I opened a new note and titled it, Things She's Done That I Let Slide. The list flowed faster than I expected. Forgot to include me in Sophie's bridal shower email chain. Sent the group Christmas itinerary without my name, twice. Accidentally tagged the wrong Eleanor in a family Facebook post and left it up for days. Scheduled brunch, the day after telling me they were taking a break from gatherings. By the time I finished, my jaw ached again, not from anger this time, but from clarity. Right before I was about to shut my laptop, another message came through. Not from Cassandra, from her assistant. Someone I didn't know personally, but who had once emailed me about catering options. Attached was a screenshot. Another group message thread, most likely meant for a different recipient. Cassandra, don't worry, she's not coming. I handled it. She handled it. I don't know how long I stared at those 4 words, but when I blinked, the room was darker. The clock read past 10, and Marcus was still in the den, pretending none of this existed. I stood up, crossed the kitchen, and reached for the manila folder. I added the email and the screenshot printout, then closed it with care. This wasn't about a cabin. It never was. I sat on the edge of my bed, folder in my lap, staring at the word cancellation printed in sharp, emotionless font across the top of the Catamaran Company's email. I had read it so many times that the ink felt etched into my eyes. But the truth wasn't in the email. It was in everything that came before it. The Odyssey wasn't just a boat. Not to me. It was the first thing I ever bought that no one handed to me, no one helped me with. It was mine. Born from 5 years of late nights, skipped vacations, rejections from investors who said things like, "You've got a great smile, but we're going with someone more aggressive." They meant male. They just didn't say it. Back then, I ran deliveries myself when drivers quit last minute. I walked into meetings in heels with no cushion, wearing secondhand blazers that I had steamed in gas station bathrooms. And through it all, I kept telling myself, you don't need their validation. Just build the thing. Make it real. When the company finally turned a profit, and not a little one, but the kind that makes the same investors crawl back with sheepish grins, I didn't buy a designer bag or a car. I bought that catamaran. Quietly, without fanfare. I still remember signing the check. My hand didn't even shake. There was a strange calm, like I had finally stepped into a version of myself I'd been trying to prove existed. And yet, legally, I had put Marcus's name on the ownership papers too. It makes tax stuff cleaner, our accountant had said. Better for trusts, easier down the road. Down the road, indeed. Because within months, the Odyssey became part of the Thorne family lore. But not my part of the family. No, it was Marcus's catamaran, the Thorne family's sea legacy. Cassandra's exact words at one of the last family brunches I was still invited to. I remember how she lifted her glass and said, "It's so meaningful to have traditions tied to something we own as a family. It makes our legacy feel tangible." She turned to me briefly, eyes tight. "And how wonderful that Eleanor supports it." Supports it? Like I was some event planner, not the reason it existed. That memory alone might have been forgettable if it weren't part of a pattern. Cassandra had always taken credit for ideas I planted in passing conversation. Recipes that ended up in her blog. Design tips she later claimed were from a friend. Even charity events I coordinated. But she seated like the queen of altruism. Each time I told myself, it wasn't worth making a fuss. Pick your battles, I used to say. But when someone steals your voice long enough, you stop recognizing your own. A few days ago, a memory popped up on my phone. An old clip from a lifestyle podcast she did. Cassandra, sitting on a white lounger, hair curled to perfection, sunglasses resting on her head. "The catamaran is more than a place," she said, smiling at the host. "It's where my family connects. It represents our continuity, our name, our story, ours." It hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't about me being excluded from a trip. It was about being written out of something I built. They weren't just keeping me off the boat. They were cutting me from the narrative altogether, and I had helped them do it. By not correcting people, by letting Marcus speak for us, by staying quiet when Grandma Celeste said things like, "So nice of you to come along this year," by nodding when Cassandra handed out roles and titles like she was distributing parts in a high school play, always keeping me in the background. I got up from the bed, opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, and pulled out every document I'd tucked away over the years. Ownership papers, bank wires, the original catamaran catalog I had marked up with notes. Laid out across the bed, it looked like evidence in a trial I hadn't planned to prosecute. Until now, there was no outburst, no tears, just a low simmering resolve that started somewhere near my collarbone and pulsed downward like a steel thread tightening inside me. "You tried to disappear me," I whispered, running a finger over the inked signature that proved otherwise. "Now watch." They streamed the dinner live. I didn't even have to search for it. Cassandra's profile was already flagged in my notifications, a leftover setting from when I once tried to be part of the family's digital life. It popped up while I was folding laundry, the audio playing before I even realized what it was. Laughter echoed in the background, glasses clinking. A long table covered in gold-rimmed plates and eucalyptus runners stretched across a candlelit room. The caption read, "Thorne Family Dinner, so grateful for legacy and love. I stood there, holding one of Marcus's button-downs like it had betrayed me. There they were, all of them. Oily, beaming. From the head of the table, Cassandra in her usual center of attention seat, her husband Leo and the twins, a few cousins I hadn't seen in years, and Aunt Betty, Marcus's aunt, who always claimed she didn't like boats. Apparently, she'd changed her mind. No one had mentioned this dinner to me. Not a text. Not a call. It wasn't just an oversight. It was orchestration. Then Cassandra stood to make a toast. Her tone was soft, practiced. "When we gather like this," she began, "I'm reminded of what makes our family unique. It's not just tradition. It's the people who carry that tradition with intention." Heads nodded, cameras panned. She continued, eyes glossy with what might have passed for sentiment if you didn't know how rehearsed it always was. "We only bring those who understand what this legacy truly means. Those who add to it, not subtract." That line, that carefully delivered little knife. I paused the video, rewound, watched it again. We only bring those who understand what this legacy truly means. Not a name mentioned, not a finger pointed. But everyone who mattered, everyone who followed her, would know what it meant, who it excluded. And there was Marcus, sitting quietly, sipping wine. That night, I waited until he was out of the shower. He came into the bedroom in flannel pants and a t-shirt with some faded college logo, hair still damp. I clicked play on the video. He stood there, watching, arms crossed. His face didn't change, didn't react, just waited for it to end. When it did, I looked at him. "She really said that," he rubbed his jaw. "Cassandra likes theatrics, you know that." "I'm not sure that's the defense you think it is." "She was probably just trying to sound thoughtful. It's just a dinner." "No, it's a statement, and you didn't say a word." "I didn't write the speech, Eleanor. But you sat through it." His silence wasn't defensive. It was something worse, resigned. I nodded. I didn't scream, didn't cry, just absorbed the shape of his indifference, the weight of it. Later, alone in the kitchen, I made tea, the kind I didn't drink, and pulled out a box of keepsakes we never unpacked when we moved. At the bottom, I found an old invite to Sophie's baby shower, the one they claimed must have gotten lost. I remembered calling Cassandra that day, asking for the address. She'd laughed and said, "Oh, that's this weekend. I totally thought you weren't in town." I had been. I'd sent the gift weeks before. I held that envelope like it was evidence. Not of crime, just of a history I could no longer pretend wasn't deliberate. The next morning, I printed Cassandra's speech transcript from the live stream. I highlighted the sentence about those who understand legacy. I slipped it into the folder with the rest. Then I typed a message. "I hope your speech felt honest. We'll see how it holds up in person." I hit send. No emojis, no explanation, just the message. She'd know what I meant. That afternoon, I booked a car to Crystal Cove. I didn't pack a bathing suit. I didn't pack for a vacation. I packed documents, copies, receipts. I packed truth. Because I wasn't just showing up. I was taking my seat back. It wasn't the kind of packing you do with sunscreen and sandals in mind. I didn't even glance at my swimsuits. I laid out each document with surgical care. Bank transfers, email confirmations, ownership papers, a highlighted transcript of Cassandra's thinly veiled dinner speech. Each page slid into a sleeve and into the folder that now held more truth than anyone on that coastal cruise would be ready for. I chose a simple navy dress. Neutral, professional, not glamorous. This wasn't about fitting in anymore. It was about stepping in. Downstairs, the smell of coffee met me before the kitchen light did. Marcus was already flipping through news alerts on his phone, a plate of dry toast untouched next to him. He looked up as I entered, his eyes skimming the edges of my determined silence. "Did you sleep?" he asked. I sat across from him. "Enough." We both watched the coffee drip into the pot. The sound filled the space between us, steady, unrelenting. "I'm heading to Crystal Cove tomorrow," I said. He blinked. "That soon?" "I booked the car." He set his phone down. "Eleanor, look, I get that you're upset, but—" "No," I cut in calmly. "I'm not upset anymore. I'm done pretending this is confusion or oversight. It's not." He rubbed his temple, sighing. "Do we have to escalate this? Can't we just talk to them?" "They made it loud. I'm just responding in kind." Marcus leaned back in his chair. I don't want to choose between you and my family. You don't have to, but you do have to stop pretending they're not doing what they're doing. His mouth opened, then shut again. And that was answer enough. I stood, poured myself a cup, and left his apology unfinished. By late afternoon, I found myself at the dining table again, flipping through years' worth of moments I'd ignored. The baby shower with no invite, the group photo at Grandma Celeste's birthday where I was cropped at the shoulder, the Thanksgiving dinner where I was assigned a seat at the overflow table, while Cassandra's hairdresser sat up front. It had always been obvious. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. That's the thing about subtle exclusion. It teaches you to gaslight yourself before anyone else has to. As the sun started slipping behind the rooftops, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, a mutual friend from Marcus's side. Hey, thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot of the Odyssey's pre-boarding guest manifest. 10 names listed. Mine wasn't among them. I stared at the screen. The heading read, Confirmed Cabin Assignments. Cassandra had not only ensured my removal, she'd done it officially, professionally. She wasn't just hoping I'd skip the trip. She was betting on it. I replied to Sarah with a simple, thanks. Then I opened the family group chat, the one I hadn't spoken in for months, and typed, I'll see you in Crystal Cove. Sent. Read. No replies, none were needed. After dinner, I called Mr. Davies's office. His assistant answered on the second ring. This is Eleanor Vance. Could you confirm our joint ownership status on the Odyssey? A brief hold, then, yes, ma'am. You are listed as co-owner with full equal rights. Great. Could you email me a clean PDF copy of that contract? And print one too. I'll pick it up in the morning. Absolutely. With that, I zipped my suitcase shut. Inside, it wasn't clothing. It was years of silence, folded neatly and ready to be unpacked, on my terms. The sun hadn't fully climbed out of the horizon when I stepped out of the car. There was still that thin marine haze hanging above the marina, softening the glint of steel rails and ivory hulls lined up like polished teeth. Crystal Cove smelled like money that didn't need to introduce itself. I wore a simple black dress, structured with a high neckline, and a light tan coat that moved with the breeze. No jewelry beyond my wedding band, no statement heels. I wasn't dressing for them. I was dressing for a moment I had been preparing for, silently, methodically, without once speaking its name aloud. My suitcase clicked softly across the dock as I pulled it behind me. The wheels didn't wobble. That mattered more than I expected. Then I saw her. Cassandra stood at the far end, near the boarding gate. Her posture was perfect. Hairpin just so, smile frozen mid-conversation, with a guest I vaguely recognized from someone's second wedding. She looked up, and she saw me. For a breathless second, her face stopped moving entirely. Eyes narrowed. Hand midair with a champagne flute. If there was ever a moment where sound seemed to die around someone, this was it. Grandma Celeste turned too. She said something, I couldn't hear what, but her expression didn't carry shock. Just mild inconvenience. Marcus was there, of course. He was, not by my side, but at the perimeter of their circle. He didn't wave. He didn't move. I didn't slow as I approached the group. Around Cassandra, they began to pivot their bodies away, not with aggression, just enough to form an unspoken barrier, as if social choreography could erase reality. I stopped just before them, said nothing, offered no smile, only a single sharp nod, and walked past. Their silence was my music. The staff at the Odyssey didn't flinch. A tall woman in a navy blazer stepped aside, giving a subtle bow of acknowledgement as I rolled my suitcase up the ramp. My heels tapped once, twice on the teak, before settling into the rhythm of the deck. I paused at the edge of the railing, staring out over the open sea. The water glimmered, calm, indifferent, patient. This was the kind of silence I liked, the kind that didn't demand anything from me. Then came the voice. "Welcome aboard, Miss Vance," the lead crew member announced, clear and loud enough to carry across the dock. "The owner is now aboard." It wasn't just a greeting, it was a declaration. Behind me, I didn't have to turn to know what Cassandra's face looked like. That mix of disbelief and rage. That forced composure cracking just enough to reveal the tremor underneath. I'd seen it before, in small doses, but now it played out in full view of her curated audience. The crew member's voice dropped to a respectful tone, just for me. "We've been waiting for your clearance before departure." I met her eyes. "Proceed." She nodded, then walked toward the captain's station. I moved through the lounge, past the floral centerpieces that screamed Cassandra, past the strategically arranged place settings meant to announce a hierarchy. I didn't sit, I didn't acknowledge, I just kept walking, through the main salon, down the portside hallway, and out onto the aft deck. There, alone, I finally exhaled. The marina began to drift away as the engines hummed to life. Land pulled back slowly at first, like a reluctant child being told it's time to go home. I set my suitcase down and gripped the railing. Not tight, just firm. Not to hold on, but to let go. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't an afterthought. I was the gatekeeper now. I stayed seated in the lounge longer than necessary, not because I was tired. God knows adrenaline alone could have carried me through the week, but because it was useful. To watch people try to recover from a loss they didn't see coming. Cassandra hadn't said a word to me since we left the dock. She'd made eye contact exactly once, when I crossed the main deck, and even then it was more instinct than choice. She hadn't prepared for this version of me, the one who didn't flinch or wait for an invitation. She was pacing now, not frantically, but just enough to betray nerves. She'd stop mid-step, adjust a floral centerpiece, or realign a place card, as if those gestures might restore control. Her husband, Leo, made a few attempts at small talk with nearby guests, but their laughter came too fast, too loud, manufactured. I sipped lemon water, legs crossed, posture relaxed. Brenda, my journalist friend who'd heard whispers, sat beside me, thumbing casually through her phone. Though I knew her journalist's ears were tuned to every sound in the room. "I give it 10 minutes before she tries to hijack the narrative," she whispered. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Right on cue, Cassandra stepped onto the upper deck, phone in hand. From my seat, I could see her angle the camera just right, catching the best light. The Odyssey's sleek silhouette behind her. Her voice turned syrupy. "Hi everyone," she beamed. "We're so excited to share a little slice of our family tradition today. There's nothing like the open water to remind you who you are and where you come from. Family is everything. Legacy, loyalty, love." I nearly smiled at the word loyalty. She kept talking, stringing together phrases that sounded pulled from a greeting card. "The people who are here, well, they understand what it means to build something that lasts. Not just wealth, but memory, commitment." Behind her, in the movement, a crew member, unaware of the stream, or maybe very aware, walked by and said, clearly and casually, "Glad to have you aboard again, Miss Vance. The owner." The camera didn't swing, but her face. Oh, her face. She froze for a split second. The broadcast hung in a weird silence. You could hear the engines humming in the background, the sea lapping against the hull, a fork dropping somewhere nearby. Then she tried to recover, lips twitching into a smile, but it was too late. Brenda leaned toward me, eyes gleaming. "That's going viral in 3, 2. And sure enough, comments started pouring in under the live stream. "Wait, she's the owner? Damn that shift." "Tell us more, Miss Eleanor." Cassandra tapped her screen a few times, clearly trying to kill the feed, but the damage had landed. It wasn't just an awkward moment. It was public revelation. Her image-first performance had backfired on a live audience. She stormed off the deck. 10 minutes later, she found me near the port hallway. "You planned that," she hissed. I met her gaze, unbothered. "Planned what? A man doing his job?" "Don't play dumb, Eleanor." I set down my glass. I didn't tell him to say it. I just let you speak your truth and watched it fall apart. "You don't belong here." I stood slowly. "That's the thing, Cassandra. I don't need to belong. I bought my place." She blinked like I'd slapped her. Then she turned and walked away. I returned to my cabin in silence, sat on the edge of the bed, opened the folder, ran my fingers over the transcripts, contracts, bank receipts. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. The dining salon glowed with soft, curated light, candle flames flickering against glass, gold flatware glinting beside folded linen napkins. Dessert had just been served, vanilla bean panna cotta with a dusting of citrus zest. No doubt Cassandra's doing. I hadn't touched mine. For the entire evening, I said nothing. I let them laugh. Let them perform. Let Cassandra run her scripted show, smiling like the live stream hadn't betrayed her 3 hours prior. When she stood to give a closing toast, her voice was polished, her cadence measured. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she began, her gaze sweeping the table with performative warmth. "It's not just about luxury, it's about legacy. The people who keep our family story alive, who uphold its integrity, who understand the value of what we've built together. That's what makes this tradition so meaningful." She didn't look at me, not once, but the subtext screamed in bold. I waited for the murmurs to settle, the wine glasses to lower. Then, without raising my voice or changing my tone, I stood. "I'd like to contribute something to this conversation about legacy," I said. Cassandra froze, with her glass midair. I reached down into my leather folder, pulled out a printed transcript on company letterhead, and laid it flat in the center of the table. Silence. Several people leaned in. Marcus didn't. He just stared at me like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "It's from a Zoom call dated last month," I said, my voice steady, "between Cassandra and the Thorne legal consultant." My finger tapped a highlighted sentence near the bottom of the page. "She's not blood," I read aloud. "She shouldn't own a family asset." Nobody moved. Cassandra's face drained of color. "And yet," I continued, sliding a second sheet onto the table, "this is the purchase agreement for the Odyssey. Initial down payment made by Eleanor Vance, sole investor. Legal co-owner listed first." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it again. "I'm not bringing this up for drama," I said. "I'm bringing it up because I'm tired of being spoken about in closed rooms, as if I'm not standing in the next one." Cassandra cleared her throat like she might interrupt, but I wasn't done. For years, I've let things slide. Snubbed invitations, comments said just out of earshot, credit shifted and conveniently forgotten. But let me be clear, this isn't about being included anymore. It's about being visible. Marcus's voice broke the silence. "I didn't know she was doing this," he said, eyes wide. "Cassandra, why?" Cassandra opened her mouth, but only a stammer came out. I was protecting the family. I didn't think you thought I'd stay quiet," I said softly, "and you were almost right." A cousin coughed into her napkin. Someone else pushed back a chair. The atmosphere, so carefully manicured, began to splinter. Grandma Celeste made a clumsy attempt to redirect. "Perhaps we could table this for another time." "No," said a voice from the far end of the table. It was Mr. Henderson, a family friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "I think we've all been told a different version of things." Others nodded, murmured agreements under their breath. Not outrage, not defense, just realization. I looked at Cassandra again. "You can keep building your version of the story, but not on top of my name." She sat down hard. I gathered the documents and returned them to the folder with care, not haste. Before walking out, I paused. "If you want to know the truth," I said, "don't ask the loudest voice in the room. Ask the one who has the receipts." The only sound left that night was the soft pulse of ocean water brushing the hull. No clinking glasses, no music, just hushed voices behind partially closed doors, the occasional click of a cabin latch, and the kind of silence that fills a space after something irreversible has been said. I walked the outer deck barefoot, holding my shoes in one hand, feeling the cool teak underfoot. The salt air stung a little more tonight, as if it too had picked up on the unraveling tension. There were no long stares, no dramatic gestures, just avoidance. Small groups had scattered after dinner, splintering in their alliances like a house with no foundation. Even Grandma Celeste had vanished without a word. As I passed the lower deck cabins, I heard her voice, not loud, not theatrical, just low, like a fuse burning quietly. She took it. It was always meant to be mine. The words floated through the sliver of an open door, thin enough to ignore, but sharp enough to pierce. I didn't stop walking. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. She hadn't said she was sorry, only that she had been caught. Later, back in our cabin, Marcus stood by the small built-in dresser, folding a shirt he hadn't worn. Something about that made me angrier than I expected. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. He didn't speak right away. I think I always knew, he finally said, voice thick. Not the extent of it, but I saw things. He didn't look at me. I should have said something, every time she made a dig, every time she left you out, but I thought if I kept the peace long enough, it would work itself out. I didn't interrupt. I let her write the script because I didn't want to be the one who ruined the show. I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. That was more than I'd ever had from him before. You still let it play out this long, I said. I know. I walked past him, pulled the sheets down, and slid into bed. I didn't invite more conversation. He didn't push for it. Sometimes the sharpest sentences are the ones left unsaid. In the morning, before the rest of the Odyssey stirred, I sat alone in the lounge with a cup of black coffee and a notebook. One by one, people came and went, some pausing, offering nods that weren't quite apologies, but weren't dismissals either. Cassandra didn't come down, but others did. Lena, Marcus's cousin, always too polite to pick sides, lingered near the breakfast bar. I should have spoken up a long time ago, she said, not quite making eye contact. Aunt Betty, who once told me I was too serious, brought me an extra spoon for the sugar and said nothing. Just placed it gently beside me and walked away. Kevin, Leo's older brother, muttered as he passed, I saw it coming. Didn't think it'd crack like this. Each of these tiny acknowledgments formed something sturdier than the fake smiles I'd endured for years. Back in the cabin that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't Cassandra I thought about. It was me. Not the version of me who had just claimed her place, but the one who for years bent herself into smaller and smaller corners, trying to be palatable, acceptable, agreeable. That version had tried too hard, swallowed too much, nodded too often. I mourned her. Not because she was weak, but because she was exhausted. And no one noticed it. It wasn't grief, not quite. More like resignation, like watching a tide pull out and realizing you never needed to chase it to begin with. And then around 3 a.m., I got out of bed and opened the folder. Not to read, just to see it. To remind myself I wasn't imagining any of this. That I had proof. And now, peace. The next morning arrived wrapped in fog, both on the water and in everyone's faces. Breakfast was served like nothing had happened. Eggs, soft scrambled. Toast still warm. Fresh fruit fanned out on ceramic platters. But the silence said everything. No idle chatter about the view. No cheerful commentary on the day's itinerary. Just quiet. They didn't avoid me now. They didn't rush to include me either. They observed cautiously, as though something sacred had been unmasked, and no one quite knew how to honor it. I sat at the end of the table, hands around my mug. Not triumphant, just present. And that alone had shifted the atmosphere. My phone buzzed around mid-morning. I stepped out to the lower deck to take the call. The voice on the other end was steady and unmistakably careful. Eleanor, it's Mr. Davies. His tone held the kind of weight lawyers reserved for when they were about to confirm something you'd always known, but no one had ever dared say aloud. I want to apologize, he said, for even entertaining the paperwork Cassandra attempted to draft. I knew it wouldn't hold, but I should have shut it down sooner. I let the silence speak for me. You were always the rightful owner, he continued, on paper and in spirit. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. I thanked him and hung up. The waves rocked gently below me, like the boat itself was nodding in agreement. Upstairs, I found Brenda in the lounge, her laptop open, fingers dancing across keys. She didn't look up. I posted it, she said. I didn't ask what. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, an essay, polished, articulate, piercing. The woman they tried to erase, a lesson in silence, ownership, and standing your ground. My name was in the byline. Did you want me to take it down? She asked sincerely. No, I said. It had already racked up shares. Comments flooded in, most from strangers, many from women who recognized a version of themselves in my story. This isn't revenge, I said. Brenda smiled. No, it's record-keeping. Later that afternoon, I stepped out to the stern. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the horizon like he was hoping it might tell him something he didn't already know. He turned when he heard me. I've been thinking, he said, voice even, about what I said or didn't say for a long time. I said nothing, waiting. I didn't protect you, not the way I should have, not when it counted. His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't waver. If you'll let me, I want to make it right. I spoke to Mr. Davies. We can restructure the ownership. Make it solely yours. You've earned it 100 times over. I looked at him, long and steady. This was never about a title, I said. It was about being seen, fully, finally. He nodded. He didn't press further. And that, more than any offer of ownership, meant something. That evening, I found myself alone again on the deck. The wind was softer now, less defiant. The sky had cracked open just enough to let light spill in golden streaks across the sea. I closed my eyes. Let it settle. Let it be enough. I wasn't defending my place anymore. I was occupying it. The deck was empty, and for once, it didn't feel like exile. The sun hovered low, bleeding streaks of amber into the Pacific, shadows stretching long across the polished wood. I stood barefoot again, coffee forgotten on the railing beside me, arms resting loosely at my sides. There was no rush to move, no agenda, no audience. The ship, like the family aboard it, had finally quieted. When the drama clears, what's left behind is just space. Cassandra hadn't said a word since the documents landed on the table, not even her usual flurry of half-truths and tight smiles. She'd eaten alone last night in the lower salon, the staff politely offering her another glass of wine while no one else joined. This morning, I saw her seated inside, behind the wide window pane, still as marble, hands folded, eyes unfocused. She caught my gaze. I didn't flinch. I just turned away. It was a strange kind of power, not lashing out, not retaliating, but simply not giving her any more of my energy. Later, just before dinner, Grandma Celeste approached me. She'd always carried herself with an air of quiet command, the matriarch in pearls who knew when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. This time, she looked smaller. Not physically, but something about her posture had changed. Less rigid, almost hesitant. I didn't see it before, she said without preamble. Now I do. I waited. That was all she offered. No apology, just recognition. It was enough. I didn't reply, just nodded once, slow and steady. Some things don't require elaboration. Some wounds close without sound. Afterward, I sat alone again in the reading nook beside the starboard windows. I thought about all the things I had once longed to hear. You were right. We should have included you. We're sorry, but the truth is, I didn't need them anymore. The hole I'd tried to fill with their approval no longer gaped. It had closed itself while I wasn't looking, stitched together by something I didn't know I had in me until I was forced to stand. That night, after the last of the wine had been poured and laughter had returned in fractured tones, I returned to our cabin. Marcus was already there, a small cup of tea in hand. He didn't say anything grand, didn't kneel or plead or try to make it all disappear. He simply handed me the cup and sat beside me on the edge of the bed. After a long pause, he said, "Thank you for staying. You could have walked." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw someone trying not just to be right, but to be real. I didn't say, "I forgive you." That would have been premature. I just let my hand rest lightly on his, and that was enough. The ship began its slow turn back toward shore in the early hours of morning. I walked out onto the top deck once more, this time with no need to perform, no need to prove. The water below stretched endlessly, soft and silver, a mirror to the stillness inside me. I caught my reflection in the glass door as I turned back inside. Not tentative, not waiting, just me. The house welcomed me like it had been holding its breath. Nothing had changed. Same creaky spot near the pantry, same stack of unread magazines by the couch, but everything felt different. I set the suitcase down in the front hallway and let the silence settle. No alerts, no missed calls, no new text from Cassandra. For the first time in years, I didn't check for one. I unpacked slowly over the next few days. Not just clothes, but everything I'd carried back from that cruise. Documents, hard truths, a spine that had grown itself back without asking permission. By Wednesday, I was organizing the drawer in the hallway credenza when I found it. A small folded note wedged between an old envelope and a forgotten grocery list. My father's handwriting was unmistakable, blocky, neat, purposeful. Don't fight for a seat. Build your own table. I had no memory of when he gave it to me. Maybe it was tucked inside a birthday card or handed off after some forgettable family dinner, where I'd felt invisible and he had noticed. I sat with the paper for a long while. The next morning, my phone rang. The name surprised me. Clara, Cassandra's niece. 23, whip-smart, just out of grad school. Always the quiet one in the corner who watched everything and said nothing. I hope I'm not crossing a line, she said. But I've been thinking about the trip. About you. I waited. You're the only one in the family who built something yourself. Not inherited, not married into. You made it. I didn't speak. I'm applying for this business mentorship program, and I wondered, could you look over my application? My answer was simple. Yes. Legacy, I realized, starts quietly. A week later, I hosted Sunday brunch. Nothing formal, just eggs, toast, fresh strawberries, and people who had earned the right to sit at my table. Marcus made the coffee. Brenda brought lemon bars. Mr. Davies showed up with his wife, and I gave them the sunniest seat by the window. I didn't try to fill the house. I didn't extend an invite to everyone with the last name Thorne, just the ones who knew how to sit at a table and really talk. Not everyone needs to come, I told Marcus as he poured the coffee. Just the ones who belong by spirit, not blood. He nodded and kissed my temple. I had traded legacy for truth, and it fit better. Later that afternoon, as I was rearranging the dining room bookshelves, I found myself thinking about what Cassandra might have said if she had ever apologized. Maybe she would have blamed pressure, or tradition, or that false narrative of protecting the family name. And I'd have said only to myself, never to her, I forgive you, but I don't need you to say it. Because some piece isn't shared, it's claimed. The dining table we sat around that day wasn't the one from Marcus's parents' house, or the one Cassandra had tried to curate around social status. It was mine, picked out secondhand, refinished by a woman who learned to shape things instead of beg for a place. There was no toast that day, no speech, just conversation. Real, unscripted, full of pauses and tangents and laughter that didn't need a camera. I looked around that room, at the people who showed up not because they had to, but because they wanted to, and I smiled. This seat was never given. I built it. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do isn't to fight louder. It's to stand still, to claim space without asking, and to stop apologizing for taking up room in a world that underestimated you. I used to believe that if I played by the rules, stayed quiet, proved myself, I'd earn a place at someone else's table. But the truth is, you don't need to be invited when you've already built your own. If there's anything this story taught me, it's that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. That legacy doesn't come from who your family is. It comes from what you create when no one is looking. And sometimes, healing doesn't sound like forgiveness. It sounds like peace. Now I want to ask you, have you ever been made to feel like an outsider in your own family? Have you ever stayed quiet when you should have spoken up? Or spoken up when no one expected you to? Let's talk about it in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story touched you. Tell me where you're watching from, or share what part of this resonated with you most. And if you didn't connect with this video, I'd still love to hear why. Your story matters too. If this video moved you, inspired you, or even just made you pause for a moment, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter. I promise, the stories only get deeper from here.